Today I want to talk about Donda. I don't know if this video is going to be a review per se. It might just be a story. But what I do know is the story starts back in 2013. That's when I became a Kanye fan. For me, it started with Yeezus. Yeezus got me into his catalog, and it also got me into hip-hop more generally because I was like, what is this? There's music that exists that sounds like this? I saw him perform Black Skinhead and New Slaves on SNL back then, and it just opened my eyes. Like, what have I been missing out on? So ever since 2013, he's been arguably my favorite artist, but I don't think he's above criticism. Obviously, he gets into a lot of antics.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish.
For 400 years, that sounds like a choice.
But I also don't love every song and every album that he makes. Truth be told, the last time he had my album of the year would have been 2013 with Yeezus. But, you know, along came Donda. In the time since I became a fan, Kanye's always been one to do things differently. Yeezus infamously has no cover at all. The cover is a concept designed by the late Virgil Abloh as sort of a open casket funeral to the CD format. 2016 with The Life of Pablo, he premiered that album at Madison Square Garden with a listening party, and that's where he came up with this concept of a living album. And what that means, if you don't know, is it's not finished.
Job's not finished.
I don't remember the timeline back then, but you know, he kept adding tracks, just slapping them on the end. And of course, in 2018, he produced 5 albums for 5 different artists, 5 weeks in a row, and for each held a listening party. In 2019, we got everybody's favorite Kanye album, Jesus is King, which had a traditional release, but was a gospel album. Around that same time, he started performing with his Sunday Service Gospel. For anybody who didn't notice, he also released several albums with the Sunday Service Choir. Those are worth checking out if you haven't. Then we get to 2021 with Donda, where again we have listening parties that are bigger than ever before, and we also get this stem player, which I'm going to talk about later.
He's done miracles on me.
The timeline of the Donda events is worth talking about. Apparently there was the first one in Las Vegas I know nothing about, and then came the Apple Music events, and the beginning of Kanye's residency in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. The first listening party was, you know, Kanye walking around in a red jacket and a mask, playing what we thought was the album. You know, it opened with Donda and it ended with Jail, and I've heard that Kanye kind of cut things short because he didn't get the reaction he wanted when Jail came on with Jay-Z, and that's because the music just wasn't playing correctly at the stadium, so no one could hear it was Jay-Z. And of course the album didn't release at that point. So everyone said, okay, we're never getting this. For several weeks, he's living in the stadium in what seems like prison conditions.
This on Donda, on my mama,
He's working out, he's wearing all black. 2 weeks after the initial Donda listening party, he does another. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch this one, but I caught the end of it. I was listening to it, and there were already dramatic changes to the music and the sequencing. New songs, new guest appearances, the album was evolving.
Job's not finished.
Then a couple weeks after that, we get the final listening party, and this one is at Soldier Field in Chicago. Kanye brings the party home.
Donda, 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 Donda.
Again, we have drastic changes to the album. Here, there's some that are very controversial. You know, you have DaBaby replacing Jay-Z on Jail, which is an interesting stylistic choice. And then Marilyn Manson is just kind of standing with Kanye at the house of his mother. Me personally, I wouldn't allow Marilyn Manson within 40 feet of my mom. But it's a spectacle. He's built a replica of his childhood home. He lights himself on fire at one point. I believe Kim Kardashian is walking around in a wedding dress. It's a lot. It's an incredible event, and it's unlike pretty much anything that you would traditionally see for an album. I mean, who else but Kanye would do something so ridiculous?
forever.
At long last, we get the album itself. It's got no album cover at all. And as I reviewed it back when it came out, it was messy and bloated, and I think that holds up because, man, you're looking at so many tracks. It's an hour and 40 minutes plus, and it's sequenced like somebody has no idea how to sequence an album. Look, am I saying that Kanye can't sequence an album? No. Am I saying that I can sequence it better? Yes. I don't know who sequenced this one, but the version that we got was very choppy. You know, you had all these part 2s stuck on the end, and the sequencing had evolved many different times through this series of listening parties. And by the time we got at the end, it looks completely different. Remember that I said Jail ended the first one, and now it opens the album. The final version is missing tracks and verses that were on previous iterations of the album, and ultimately it is way too long. But remember what I said for Life of Pablo. This is the living album concept. We're seeing it play out in real time. It's not just Kanye adding a few songs a week after the album comes out. we are seeing it in rough drafts.
Job's not finished.
So that's where this comes in. So the last time around with Life of Pablo, we saw that it was a living album. We saw that he was tweaking it. And I personally interpreted that as make your own version of the album. You know, take what you want.
Take what you want.
But here I don't have to interpret. He gave us the album in a format that we could make our own. If you don't know what this thing is, it contains the entire Donda album. It allows you to isolate what are called stems on each track, right? You've got vocals, bass, melody. Essentially, you can remix, you can loop, you can do all sorts of things. And you can actually do it with any music that you put on here.
Just one time for the back.
It's a pretty good loop, we can work with that. But how bold of Kanye to create this thing and give you the album and say, here, you play with it, you do whatever you want. So before I even got the stem player, yeah, that's what I did. I made my own version of the album.
Spirit won't die.
The album cover I made uses a picture taken by Frankie Vergara. Go check him out on Instagram or Twitter. It's a picture taken of Soldier Field, of that final listening party. And I think it's a really cool shot. I mean, damn, look at this. Not only did I create my own cover, but I cut out some songs too. My version of the track list kind of reflects the first listening party. I sequenced this in a way that the tracks flow into one another, and there's a broad narrative structure.
See this in 3D. Make it all come to life.
I'm biased, but I think my version flows really well. And if you want to check it out, I've got it on Apple Music and Spotify. Unfortunately, even the version on Spotify isn't going to sound like this because I had to make my own edits to get it on a CD. It is just too long. So for anybody watching this who didn't like the album, Keep My Spirit Alive, Come to Life, and 24. Just listen to those 3 tracks in a row and tell me what you think. And of course, after I make my version, he puts out a deluxe. Like, we need a deluxe. The trend of deluxe albums it's frustrating for me. Right? It's essentially a re-release of the album to get more streams, and they put 3 or 4 songs on the end. What Kanye did is basically that. He made the album longer, but he also gave us a new sequence. And the new sequence is pretty bizarre. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But he also gave us some really good tracks.
You know why my spirit's called.
Never Abandon Your Family. If you attended at least the first listening party, I know that track was there, and that was one of the most moving on the album at the time. But I've already made mine, and now I have to figure out a way to get that on there. Life of the Party is a great song, and Andre's verse is crazy. Unfortunately, the final release of this track does not have the incredible Drake diss. So now we move into a question that a lot of people were asking themselves around the time of this release. Donda or CLB? There's been a lot of sparring between these two for years now. And Drake, of course, with his tail between his legs after losing to Pusha T, has to lash out at somebody that theoretically he could beat. I say that because if Drake really tried,
To me, Benihana is pigeon food. It's not a forgiving mood.
head-to-head, he and Kanye in a rap battle, that would be close. Problem is you can't go head-to-head with Kanye on an album battle. Drake's become an artist who doesn't really make albums the way a lot of other artists do. If you go back to More Life, he styled that as a playlist. I think that was his way of telling us, guess what, this is not an album. I don't do albums anymore. I'm just going to give you a ton of songs to pad your playlist and call it my playlist. The reality is he just gave us a bloated album. And he continued to do that with every project since. So Donda vs. CLB, they're both too long. We can start there. They're both pretty cohesive, but they also both serve extremely different purposes. Donda is a tribute to Kanye's mother. He's experiencing a lot of grief. He's processing all sorts of extreme emotion. CLB is Drake being Drake.
Say that you a lesbian, girl, me too. Hey.
Look, CLB, I'm not saying there's nothing there. There's very little there for me, but it is an album. I love fast food. It's tasty, but it's not fulfilling. And if you eat too much of it and that's all you eat, you're probably going to die. There's obviously a place for both albums. And if you like either one, great. If you don't like either one, that's okay too. I personally am going to pick Donda over CLB, but it doesn't have to be a competition.
I know you're watching me.
I know I got a little sidetracked there with the rivalry discussion, but at the end of the day, this is my favorite album of the year. I've got another video coming where I list all of my favorite albums of the year, and this will be number 1. You can mark that now. I'm so impressed that I got to experience a Kanye album as good as some of the last ones. I had this worry after Jesus is King that Kanye was going to become the next Eminem. And I don't mean that in the sense of becoming a rap god. I mean that in the sense of making bad albums.
Plus my peanuts got an attitude.
But he's back, man, and he gave us something really special. And I know I'm biased because I took so much time tinkering with the album and making my own version. And if you don't have the patience to do that or the interest, that's okay. And maybe this album's not going to resonate with you like that. But I hope something did this year because this was a great year for music. I'm so proud that I have this platform now that I can share thoughts with you guys. Thanks for sticking around for this video. I know it's long. It's certainly not 10 seconds. Yeah, I had to get this off my chest. I hope you guys enjoyed.